Today is the fourth Sunday of Lent. 4 weeks into the Lenten season. 1 whole month of purple or unbleached linen vestments, muted solemn hymns, no Gloria in Excelsis, and a weekly program that talks about the end of life. If you have taken the demands of the Lenten season as outlined in the Book of Common Prayer, you have read and studied daily the Scripture readings. You have prayed and meditated. You have given up some pleasurable thing, a pleasurable experience in favor of fasting. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for a party. And that is exactly what we get in the gospel lesson for today. Not just any old party, but the mother of all parties. That is certainly one way to describe Jesus' story of the prodigal son. Jesus tells that story as a result of being criticized by the religious authorities of his day. He associates with the wrong kind of people. He associates with the poor and the marginalized who flock to him. And so in face of their criticism, these self-righteous folks who accuse him, he tells this story. It is the story of a prosperous landowner who has 2 sons. Now I remind you that in that day women had no legal standing whatsoever. So there are no women in the story. Also in that day, the firstborn male was entitled to 2/3 of the estate of his father when the father was dead. The other third would be divided among the remaining males in the family. This division of family wealth would take place only after the death of the head of the family. Keep that in mind. So when the younger son comes to his father and says, "I want my inheritance now," that is a polite biblical way of saying, "Dad, drop dead." The younger son takes his portion of the inheritance and travels to a far country. Now, I must admit I know something about the far country. It can be a distant geographical place, yes. Las Vegas comes to mind, maybe. But it also can be a state of being. A far country can be a state of being. You don't have to travel a great distance to live in the far country. Because you see, the far country is really the belief that I am the center of the universe and I'm not accountable to anyone but myself. The younger son did exactly what he wanted to do. He was the center of his own universe, and the problem is it just didn't work out too well. In time he was broke. He had to humiliate himself by hiring out to who else but a pig farmer. Think how that line went over with Jesus' righteous listeners. And we are told, hitting rock bottom, eventually he came to himself. I love that phrase. He came to himself. I know something about that as well. It's opening your bank statement and you've not far from negative numbers. It's your spouse saying to you, I want a divorce. It's coming home to your one-bedroom apartment after that divorce. That one-bedroom apartment where there are 3 pieces of furniture and they all came from the Goodwill store. And in the background on the CD player, Johnny Cash is singing on a Sunday morning sidewalk, I'm wishing, Lord, that I was stoned. Because there's something in a Sunday that makes a body feel alone. Our younger lost son in Jesus' story begins his journey home. Maybe his father will have him. Maybe he can hire out. Instead of pigs, he'll take care of the other sheep. He has forfeited his sonship. At least he would have a decent place to sleep and enough to eat. And so home he goes. All for a decent place to sleep and enough to eat. Can't you picture him coming down a long road? You know, the far country is over that way. Coming down the road, mumbling, talking to himself, rehearsing what he's going to say. In the distance is his father's property, and his father is in the fields with the hired hands and his older son. The old man looks down that road every single day and has done so ever since his son went down that road. And then he sees him, shuffling along, filthy, dirty, no sandals, bleeding feet, mumbling to himself what he's going to say when he finally gets there. Father begins to walk, to greet him. And then he does something so uncharacteristic. No Jewish man would do this. Pulls up his long ankle-length robe and starts running to greet his son. Imagine how that went over with Jesus' listeners. He embraces the boy. The younger son begins his rehearsed speech. The father doesn't want to hear it. Puts his arm around him and leads him back home. Calls the servants out. Draws some bath water, get him clean clothes. Let me put this signet ring on your finger. Kill the fatted calf. Get a band. We're going to have the mother of all parties. And that's exactly what happened. The band's playing, they're dancing, singing, having a great time. If Hollywood were making this, that would be the end of the film. the cameras would slowly draw back and you would get that beautiful picture of a celebration. But Jesus doesn't end the story. The party is interrupted by the older brother, who is mad as hell. He confronts his father and he says to him, "This son of yours, who's blown his inheritance, slept with prostitutes, done all sorts of things, and you give him a party. You never killed the fatted calf for me and my friends." Can't you imagine his anger? Put yourself in his place. Worked your behind off all these years, sweated in the pastures, done everything an obedient, loving son would do. And the father says to him, actually what he does is he shifts the focus of the camera. It was first on the younger son, then on the oldest son, but now it's on the father. And the scene shifts to him. And what he says is, first of all, there's plenty of wealth to go around. No one in this family is going to run short. All that I have is yours. All that I have is yours. See, this is not so much a party for the younger son, it's the old man's party. It's the party he throws for both sons. I've come to the conclusion that of all of Jesus' parables, this is the most inappropriately named. This isn't the parable of the prodigal son. This is the parable of the loving father. Now, it's the parable of the loving father. He lays claim to the wayward child as well as the loyal, hard-working older brother. We've all been told you can't go home again. Ain't true. Ain't true. I close with sharing with you a quote from a well-known, respected theologian, Helmut Thielicke. The ultimate theme of this story and the entire gospel story is not the prodigal son, but the father who finds us. The ultimate theme is not the faithfulness of you or me, but the faithfulness of God. And this is also the reason why the joyful sound of festivity rings out from the story. Wherever forgiveness is proclaimed, there is joy and festal garments. The ultimate secret of this story is this: there is homecoming for all of us, because there is a home. There is homecoming for us all because there is a home. Amen.